few videos, we'll start looking at some of the more interesting chord substitutions. This particular video will focus on backdoor substitutions, or the backdoor sub. As previously mentioned when looking at the tritone substitution, jazz musicians often take a well-known sequence and change it by altering the chords to add greater harmonic interest to a sequence. This is known as reharmonization or reharms. Think of reharmonization as the process of adding lots of chord substitutions to a long harmonic sequence, possibly even a whole tune. Here's the traditional chords to Autumn Leaves. And this is what it sounds like. And here is a reharmonization. Notice the differences in chords. And this is what it sounds like. Why do this? Rather than rewriting entirely new material, many jazz musicians prefer to add their own take on well-known tunes, chord sequences, by adding substitutions. By adding more changes, the soloist is given more breadth of choice within their improvising, and this leads to longer, more harmonically interesting lines. Over the next few videos, we'll be looking at how to recognize and implement a number of jazz chord substitutions, all of which can add great harmonic flavor to a chord sequence. The one we'll look at first is the backdoor sub. The backdoor substitution is commonly used instead of a 2-5 in a major cadence. So, here's a basic 2-5-1 major tonal center. To change this into a backdoor sub, we replace the 2 and the 5 with 4 minor 7 and flat 7, 7. And then we add the appropriate chords. As you can see, it's commonly used to replace a major tonal center. You'll find the backdoor sub is a common device used in numerous jazz standards. Here it is in Tad Dameron's Lady Bird. Another famous example is in Misty in Bar 4. As is common in jazz, there's a couple of noticeable variations on the standard 4 minor 7, flat 7 7, 1 major 7 backdoor progression. The first is using 4 major 7 instead of 4 minor 7 as the first chord in the sequence. Here's an example. Another variation, although less common, is to resolve to chord 3-7 or 3 minor 7. Remember that 3 minor 7 is closely related to 1 major 7. This works best if 3 minor 7 is part of the 3, 6, 2, 5 turnaround. Adding extensions to any chord is a good idea, and this is also true of chord substitutions. If you're confused about extensions, remember there's another video about how to find and apply extensions to chords. For the 4 minor 7 chord, we can change this to a 4 minor 9 to reflect the extensions. For the flat 7 7, common convention is to use the harmony of the fourth mode of the melodic minor, the Lydian dominant. You might want to refresh your memory on this by looking at the video on melodic minor harmony. The Lydian dominant chord is also one of the most common contemporary sounding dominant chords and works well in a backdoor sub. To add the extensions here, you'll need to add a 9 and a sharp 11 to the chord symbol. Let's see if we can insert a backdoor sub on a common chord sequence and add some harmonic flavour to it. Let's look at how we can use the backdoor substitution to reharmonize a jazz tune. Here's a typical standard, But Not For Me by George and Ira Gershwin. We'll focus on the first 3 bars, which sound like this. We know that a backdoor substitution is commonly used as a replacement for a standard 2-5-1 in a major tonal center. So the first thing we do is look for a major 2-5-1. Here's one. Let's remove the 2-5 so we can add our backdoor sub. Now, let's add the backdoor sub where the 2-5 was. As you can see, we've replaced the original chords with the new chords. We can now add the extensions. Adding extensions are not only good practice, but they also help to avoid unnecessary clashes with the melodies. For instance, by adding a sharp 11 to the B-flat 7 chord, it means it now has an E natural in the chord, which works well with the melody note here. Here's what it now sounds like with the substitutions. So, in the next video we'll be looking at diminished passing chords.